understand that God knows what you need before you know that you need it. I'm going to say that again just in case you were texting somebody. God knows what you need before you know that you have need of it. Is there a witness here, somebody? And I want you to know that God has blessings that are strategically positioned in your life. You wonder why you wake up in the morning and find a blessing. It's because God put it there. You wonder why you go to work and find a blessing. It's because God put it there. Is there anybody here that knows that God has a blessing with your name on it and he put it in place so you can find it? And so look at the text tonight. Jehovah Jireh, yes, he was introduced to us in the Old Testament. However, he makes a special guest appearance through his son in our text for tonight. Verse 13 in our text is connected to the pericope that immediately precedes it. Because in verse number 13, the Bible says when Jesus heard what had happened, what the Bible is alluding to in this spot is the fact that John the Baptist had been beheaded. John the Baptist that baptized Jesus, John the Baptist that leaped in his mother's womb before Jesus was born. Jesus heard what had happened, and the Bible says, watch this, he withdrew by boat privately, somebody say privately, to a solitary, somebody say solitary, privately in solitary place. Please understand that this was his relative and he was beheaded. But the Bible then gets strange on us right here, because normally the Bible tells us exactly what happened when Jesus withdrew to certain places. But the Bible seems to leave us hanging right up and through here, because the Bible does not tell us what happens when Jesus withdrew privately to a solitary place. I want you to know tonight the reason why the Bible doesn't tell us, because it's none of our business what happened between Jesus and God, because the Bible says it was private and solitary. Some of y'all ain't gonna get it till tomorrow. Is there anybody here tonight that has to get away from some folks sometime? You got to steal away in Jesus. Have you ever been in your prayer closet and called on Jesus? Sometimes I got to get by myself because some people won't understand what I'm going through. You're supposed to be a preacher. You're supposed to be a pastor. You're supposed to be a Christian. Even the deepest, most profound of us have had to go to the prayer closet and say, Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, whither shall I go? And so the Bible says he withdrew privately to a solitary place. It's in those places that you can show God some things about you that everybody else won't understand. It's in those places where God will teach you what real, true stewardship is all about. Because you've got to understand that when God gives you something, he didn't give it to you just for you to put it on the wayside. When God gives you something, he wants you to use it. And here we are, good church folk. I'm moving to the next level. I'm going to the next level in God. Some folk ain't going nowhere because they have not learned how to handle the level that they're on. I wish I had time here to preach tonight. And so please understand, the Bible says that he withdrew privately to a solitary place. Watch this. I love the Bible here because the Bible then comes back in verse number 14 and it says, he landed and saw a large crowd and had compassion on them and healed their sick. Somebody shout compassion. Listen, in order, first of all, two looks here in this verse. In order for you to be ready to deal with the crowd, sometimes you got to get by yourself first. God, I don't know, maybe y'all have it together in Big Bethel, but sometimes I get to a place where I need to get away first before I go deal with some people. Y'all, I know, I understand, maybe y'all not there. Sometimes I want to say things that ain't got nothing to do with Jesus or Christ. Maybe that's just me. Y'all pray for me. That's why I go with the song when it says, bridle my tongue, Lord. Let my words edify. Let the words of my mouth be acceptable in thy sight. And so Jesus had to get by himself first before he could deal with the crowd. Watch this. He had his own issue. Why? Because the Bible says said that John the Baptist had been beheaded, Jesus withdrew to a solitary and private place, which means that he had his own issue. But there are times when you've got to give what you need. God have mercy. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, give what you need. Have you ever been to a point where you needed compassion, but you found yourself having to give compassion? Have you ever been at a point where you needed money, but you found yourself having to give money? There are about 3 people here that don't mind giving God your last, because if you know if you give God your last, then God will give you more than enough to handle where you are going. Is there anybody here that believes that God can give you more than enough? And so look, the Bible says he had his own issue, but he didn't mind giving what he needed. Touch your neighbor one more time and say, neighbor, it's not about you. It's about God. It kills me, these pseudo would-be Christians and choir members. My God, they get mad at somebody else in the choir and then they leave the choir. Listen, who are you singing to in the first place? It's not about you, it's about God. It kills me. These pseudo ushers, they got it all together, talking about I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God. Like you get mad at another usher, then you ain't serving no more. It ain't about you, it's about God. It kills me, people that get mad at the pastor and you say you're going to hold your tithe. Listen, you can keep your money because it ain't about you, it's about God. Is there anybody here tonight that knows that it's not about you, it's about God? And so that's why I'm so glad that Granny said I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I promised him that I would serve him till I die, and I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. But beloved, the text moves one more time, because in verse 15 and 16, here come the disciples. These are what I call church folk. Verse number 15 and 16, the Bible says, the disciples say, send the crowds away, and tell them to go to the village and find them something to eat. God, the crowd don't look like us. They don't smell like us. They don't roll like us. They have the crowd not from Buckhead. They from Auburn Avenue. It's the crowd. We don't want to roll with the crowd. The crowd. The disciples said, send the crowds away. Good church people, my God, rather than send them away, God have mercy, you find a reason to serve them, because the truth be told, you may be one paycheck away from being the crowd yourself. Is there a witness here tonight? And so the disciples say send the crowd away, but here comes Jesus. You don't send them away, you give them something to eat. Touch your neighbor and say, you give them something to eat. What Jesus is saying is, the reason why I bless you is so that you would not keep the blessing to yourself, but so that you can serve somebody else. But here we are, we get ours. We want to keep ours all to ourselves. Where are the people that can say, if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. And so Jesus said, you give them something to eat. Jesus said, I'm not going to leave them healed and hungry. This is still more work to do. It ain't over yet in the house of God. So sometimes you got to move over and let some other folk in. But look at the selfishness of the disciples in the text. Here they are. The disciples, they're the ones that's closest to Jesus. They're supposed to have it all together. But here come the disciples in the text. Y'all see them. They said, we only have here 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Some of y'all missed it. The back door of the text is what the disciples were saying is, there's only enough here for us. Jesus, we don't have enough to serve nobody else. This is only enough enough here for us. If we give them our 2 fish and 5 loaves, what in the world are we going to eat?